I'm just,
upsets me that
I'm on Moana right now. You think of them just again leaving up into
Like this
it's like I'm
so I
not
was-
naturally doing this.
yeah.
Welcome to episode 16 of the Three Fates podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Deanne, the birth archetype.
I'm Pam, the archetype of life.
And I'm Meredith, holding the archetype of death.
Welcome into another one. Happy to be here. How are you guys today?
Good. This one feels moody.
It does feel moody. This episode has taken us under
Under the waters.
heavy.
Yeah,
But
very
it was so funny because you think of water as like creating a sense of buoyancy, like you want to float, but we ain't floating.
Yeah.
We're sinking to the bottom.
Yeah, we're tuning into water today, and it was quite like yesterday was a really sunny kind of like sunshiny day today, and then today's been like kind of like stormy and moody.
Yeah.
And in that energy, and then we're hanging out with water today, with the element of water, and it wants to be
Seen.
dense and seen. It's kind of showing us the underside of the world of water. So we're curious about that today, and it's kind of heavy in my chest. I can feel it. It's kind of like, oh, there's a lot of grief in water.
Yeah, and on the heels of our last episode, we talked about the Akashic Records and did a beautiful unfolding of seeing the three fate archetypes through the eyes of the Akashic Records. And it was so beautiful how that episode played out. We encourage you all to go back and listen to that one. And so I think it would be maybe wise and fitting and flowing of us to dive into water again through the eyes of the Akashic Record, because I think when we were talking about it, we felt that all bodies of water are an Akash. They hold so much information and wisdom and flow right at our fingertips. And so we thought, what better way to process or work with the water through another area that holds so much information like the Akashics.
Yeah, so like water is the record keeper. And so it feels like this, if you tune into the waters on our planet, it's been the record keeper for our planet since water's
Start
been
of
on
time.
the start of this planet's time,
Yeah.
right? So it's just curious to think and feel into all the things it has to say. And even in the energy, like water carries frequency, information. If you look at the world of homeopathy, that's how they deliver that into your system, is just frequency in water to help your body receive a certain amount of information. So it's curious to think like in that aspect of frequency in water, information in water. There's a lot of information, a lot of frequency in the water of our planet.
And, I would also say not just emotions and information, but stories that it weaves of beings before us, of not just underwater species, but perhaps the world reflected around it as well. And even, I would say, the inner part of our earth. It knows, they just said to me, it knows the in-between. Because it knows the center, it knows what's below the earth. It has that in-between messaging system, and it also knows then what's above the surface. So it knows what's in between, it knows what's above, and it knows what's below. That's interesting.
And that's kind of curious too, because we're talking about this being episode, what are we at?
16.
So it's 7.
In
the numerology.
Number 7, yep.
Which is kind of like, it's the bridge, seventh chakra is that bridge between the ethers and our physical self. So there is an in-between here with the 7, which is kind of neat.
Well, and I think just, and really that link of the deep base, the starting point, or below the surface, and then high above the surface, but everything in between.
And channeling in earlier too, we were noticing like there is a consciousness travel of Dee going down into the depths of the water, into under caves, and Robin, our producer, kind of saw his energy going up into like the clouds and how water is held in the sky. So it's interesting too, that above and below.
Mare, what do you feel?
I got taken out to a completely different place with this. I think probably like the death archetype is coming through right now, but I'm just like feeling the energy of all like the souls that have passed in water, hanging out, like nautical things, people that have passed, animals that have passed. Like, I mean, all sea creatures die in the water. Like, there's just an interesting energy of like death. It feels very heavy. And I'm curious because it does, like, it's making me feel like my face is long. It's making me feel like my eyes are dark. And I'm just being curious with that right now. It feels very, very heavy. And sometimes when I work with like portals, I feel this energy a little bit. It can be like sometimes like an energy that surrounds them as like a protection thing. But it feels more like stories. Like there's so many stories here. There's so many, there's just so many voices coming at me right now. And I'm just really curious by that. It doesn't feel like I'm picking out a particular voice in general. It just feels like this wave of energy, and it feels quite, its initial presentation, which I'm curious about, feels like that sensation of drowning, right? That like overwhelming, like despair or panic or freeze and I'm just really curious about why that's coming up. Right. And we were just talking before, feeling the energy. I was like, I don't want to do this. This is weird. And so then rather than not doing it, we get curious about why do we not want to do it? Or why do I not want to talk about this? What is here? Because even that energy of, and this isn't talking about like a boundary where I feel unsafe and I don't want to do it. It's not that. It's more in the realm of like resistance to something. I love Lord of the Rings. And there's like the scene where like Gandalf the Grey gets pulled down with the Belmarok, and he's like, you could tell he like didn't want to do it, had the resignation on his face, for he gets pulled down to like deal with one of these like ancient demons, right? And so it kind of feels like that, but ultimately he comes out victorious as you know, Gandalf the White after, right? So it feels like that precipice of like, if you go where you don't want to go, like the reward is rich. Right? Look at this underground, look at this thing, look at this aspect. And maybe it's a different version of like shadow work, which I talked about a little bit, but I'm curious why it's coming on. And I'm getting lighter as I'm talking about it. So obviously this message is coming through. What is like the wisdom of the water for looking at like our shadow or looking at these aspects of self or the water itself?
And the death part of water, because I think earlier too, Dee was like talking about a tidal wave energy coming through. And then as you're speaking, I'm remembering like tsunamis and death. And then I'm reminded of the tsunami that happened in Thailand and that whole kind of Thailand region a number of years back, and how much death that caused and how much terror was in my body from still like that idea of being pulled by water like that.
Yeah.
And that
or like hurricanes, things like that, right? We see that all the time.
All the time. It's now, it's such a terrifying thing. Like that tsunami story back then, like that it shook me to my bones, and I'm still quite shaken by.
Interesting.
Yeah. Deeply. Like I can feel tears in my eyes prickling, and I had massive paranoia about tsunamis ever since.
Weird.
Yeah.
How curious. And we don't live in an area where like tsunami is a risk, right? Like we're in central BC. So,
well, I lived in Vancouver.
Yeah.
And I only lived there for a year. And there was that earthquake that happened near Japan. And there was like a slight tsunami warning. Like, oh, there might be a tsunami that comes to the West Coast. It terrified me to the bones that I decided to move from the city that day. And I left. That's when I moved back to Kelowna.
Really? I don't even, when you said you lived in Vancouver, I was like, what? I don't know if I knew that.
Oh, that was before. Yeah. Only for between. Yeah.
No,
before I knew you.
Yeah. But I still don't know that about your history.
Oh, sorry. Long time friendship. It was only a year. And then I was like, oh my gosh, I can't live here. There's like that earthquake threat down there.
Because of that.
Because of earthquake in Japan with a tsunami threat to the West Coast. I literally found a job in Kelowna. It took me months to move out. Because basically I was terrified by the spring, and I moved by the fall. So by the time I actually moved, I was okay. But I was like, I'd be going on the SkyTrain to work, and I'd be terrified that the SkyTrain was going to collapse with a tsunami or earthquake.
So you think this is a little out of proportion?
Yes.
I feel like we need to look at this.
Yeah. Like, what?
And I'm like, yeah.
So this is your fault. That's what I'm.
Yeah. All of my dead bodies in the water. From the past in my Akashic history.
I thought I had the weight of water trauma.
Yeah.
But I literally
I'm like, ooh, tsunami, clean slate.
I ran
You are
away,
the wave.
terrified. I was to the point of panicking. I called all my family in the Lower Mainland, told them to like pack their passports because that was going to be important.
Are you
and drive
joking?
no and drive I do like I was in lower mainland like
my God.
Vancouver, and I was like, driving over to my family's house in Surrey to be over the bridge because the bridge in my mind was going to collapse and I was going to be stuck in Vancouver.
Are you ever nervous to go to Tofino then? Like stuff like that? Because there's tsunami warnings everywhere there.
I know I get
all the time.
I'm like, oh, it's only a week, I can manage it.
Yeah, you
Not
can
versus
kind of
living there.
compartmentalize.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. This is ridiculous. So let's look at this.
Okay, so then there was another tsunami warning for Vancouver area, and I was living in Kelowna, and I had friends in Victoria, and it was 4 a.m, and there was something that came through the news or some summer article, and I literally panicked, woke up before the morning, started texting everybody I knew on the island, said there's a tsunami warning, get on higher ground.
You're joking.
No, this was just like a few years back, and then they're like, okay, thanks, Pam.
It's making me think of like when I lived in the prairies for a little bit. I was like a medic on an oil rig, and like they had hurricanes there, and there was like a hurricane warning. And I'm like, what do we do? They're like, you lie in the ditch. I was like, what? Just go lie in a ditch, and you can see this tornado, and I'm just like lying in a ditch, being like, is this really the?
Is this what we do?
Yeah, it's so funny. But okay, back to like okay. Pam,
Yeah, I know.
from whence does this trauma come?
So I don't know what lifetime, but even when I was a little girl learning how to swim, I remember in swimming lessons there was a point where they're like, okay, you're ready for the deep end now, and I was like, I ain't ready for the deep end. But we went there anyways, and I was like panicking. I can't remember how old I was, like young, and I couldn't tread water properly. My older sister, was in the class with me, and I was panicking. I was going to drown, so I pulled on her braid, poor thing.
Oh, God.
And so we're both now drowning and flailing around. And I remember then had a water trauma then, and I didn't go back to swimming lessons for like 4 years. I did go back. I did the whole lifeguarding thing afterwards, but I had this moment then, but that wasn't the root. Like there was something obviously akashic about this. Yes.
Keep going.
Well, that was my only kind of like scare in this lifetime. I haven't had major trauma other than this one moment trying to learn how to swim in the deep end, and it freaked me out, but nothing major, other than this like massive paranoia about tsunamis taking me down.
So I know a little bit about you.
Yes, just a little bit. Other than I lived in Vancouver.
Yeah, fuck.
Yeah, wow. Reeling from that news.
I'm just like, okay. Were you in Vancouver when I was in Vancouver?
Right?
Could we have been friends?
When were you in Vancouver?
Actually, 2010, 2011.
No, I was there earlier. I was in 2008.
Oh no, I lived there like 2002 to 2007.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay. Well,
Yeah.
dreams crashed. Okay. the tsunami crushed my dreams. No, I know a little bit about you. You volunteered as a Sirius B origin soul to come down and actually help with. You knew, like, you were born in an area where there was going to be a tsunami. You were part of the tsunami.
I was part of that tsunami.
I don't know if it was I don't know if it's necessarily the Thailand one. I'm not saying that specific, but I'm seeing you as a volunteer to be a part of that shift in consciousness. So again, we look at tsunami as like fear-based, the incoming and the impending emotion of what the water has for all those souls. So you actually came to prepare the land and the souls there, but I feel like you died in it. But that was the mission.
So when was this? If you can think about time that way. Or where? Earth?
Yeah, you were on Earth. You came to Earth for it. I'm not getting like an Earth time necessarily per se, but I'm getting that you volunteered. And it was like probably when you were in your Sirius B incarnation cycles. And then there's some healing in that, because I feel like after that and volunteering to come down to be a part of whatever messaging, I feel like I'm getting lightheaded and dizzy, but whatever messaging you were supposed to come down there to be a part of that origin or that land, that community, that water, all of the above, it still sits in you like grief. And I feel like after that, you didn't really go back to Sirius B to make amends. Like you went probably to Arcturus. You probably went somewhere else. Like you didn't necessarily go back. So it was like kind of the last lifetime you probably had
Oh,
there.
interesting. So
There's a bit of a
yeah.
disconnect with Sirius because of this, also this piece of, from your human processing or perspective, it looks like being in my Sirius energy and using water feels like almost like destructive.
Yeah. It's interesting because I don't really tune into my Sirius B history that much, which people don't know it's a water planet. So, and I'm like, I was talking about like having the story of kind of this drowning scare as a kid. And I tried wake surfing for the first time yesterday. I couldn't understand the element of water and how to like work with it and be with it. There is this kind of resistance with like,
You're cut off from the water.
yeah, and then if I tune into my system even earlier, my chest felt heavy in this session. I'm feeling a lot of grief kind of in my system, and if you're tuning into this idea of me being part of a tsunami in consciousness, and how much destruction would have come, or how many souls that would have maybe taken at that point, I can feel all that now in my tissue. Oof, it's a lot.
And maybe perhaps you were a part of the consciousness of the water and the land. Like I'm
Yeah.
hearing more something about the land and the waters, but you might not have been in human form.
I don't think so. I think it was part of the nature.
What do you think,
Yes.
Mary, over there?
I'm just happy now.
Like I said my bits.
Now the story is unfolding.
Yeah, I'm just glad I'm not feeling that heavy energy, but
Yeah.
I'm more like, okay, what causes a tsunami? There's an earthquake. Why does the earth quake? Because tectonic
Well,
plates move.
and so this is
and
this-
then it's like a transmission of energy. So what happens then? And then volcanoes come, and then new creation.
Yeah.
Death
And like,
into life.
there's all the, again, the birth, life, and death cycles in water and the alchemizing of water. So I feel like you just haven't alchemized what that tsunami was
No.
for that land and that purpose for the tsunami then.
And as you say that, because of course our body is mostly water, and I can feel the story of like if I look into the water in my cells, and we're talking about water holding information, water never forgetting, water being the Akash, water holding everything, and I can see now in my cells in the water holograms of all like a lot of faces, the faces that the water took. And
Maybe
that's
that's the souls that I was feeling.
Yeah.
That energy of like,
yeah.
All
and
the
I can
ones that
see
died.
them all. I can see these faces in my cells now, like holograms of like layers and layers and layers of these humans. Ooh.
Did they maybe manifest something where they needed a message in the water?
I'm actually now noticing like that mermaid energy.
I felt that too, but
Yeah, that Mintaka mermaid. I'm not sure if it's also Sirius B, but I'm feeling like
there's
kind of,
mermaids in Sirius B, yep.
but I'm like sirens, particularly. And I'm hearing the word liberation, like almost like this energy in my cells wants to be liberated now. And so I think that's not so much for me, but for like the resting of the consciousness. Like there is something unseen and needs to almost like the Akashic Records wants to now write records of completion for the souls that were part of that story. And however that's going to complete wherever that those souls are now, for that aspect, those stories to be like put away. And I feel like if I look at the book that holds the story of this tsunami, which whatever timeline this was in, it's still open.
It links to, can I say? It links to some Lemurian stuff. And that's probably why I was like, got to bring that in. Because the drowning, they said that you came to recreate the Lemurian type of water frequency or energy at that time, but it's like the underestimation of power, which in force created this element of the movement of water in a tsunami. But it was like this, do you understand? Like, it's like there was like, if we think of like the flooding and things of Lemuria, but how there was so much water in Lemuria and the messages in that start of time, what has to do with water, you came as water to help restore the water or to bring Lemuria back into the water, they said. Sirius did a lot of seeding into Lemuria, especially with its water creatures and the mermaids and aquatic beings. And so you're like, okay, all come and be a part of that land and bring some of it back. Can we bring some memory? I hear you saying, can we bring some memory? Can we bring some memory? But there was this underestimation of the power of also the power of water.
Yeah.
So I'm seeing then this like building of power gone into a tsunami. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting, and I'm getting memories now. Like I was last October, I was scuba diving in the Red Sea.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Right, and I was getting a lot of downloads from the information in that thing. And suppose this is a story in the Bible, of course, as Moses parting the Red Sea to walk to the Promised Land. And when I kind of really started, I was like, oh, it's probably like a tsunami. That actually what probably what happened is because when the tsunami, before it happens, it pulls the water away from the land, so the land is quite bare for some time until it like comes crashing back down. So maybe the pocket of time where the land was being pulled out, then you can cross over and walk. And I'm curious about and I was getting a lot of massive downloads of past life stories and information and lost souls in the water of in that Red Sea
Was
area.
that the one where you got disorientated?
No, that was in the Vancouver waters.
Right.
Some scuba diving stories, but that
Right.
one, no, this one in the Red Sea was very much like people trying to cross the Promised Land.
So does the tsunami then pull back
Was
its
that part of that
water
tsunami, I wonder?
to help clear
Yeah, because it was trying to clear a path.
for the death cycle?
All I'm hearing is la 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 la.
Well, it's interesting because actually,
Because
water
like, and then they're like,
represents
just
joy.
like they're asking me to like,
Water
please
is joy.
not saying
Yeah.
anything. Like they're just like, nope, don't say anything. Please just hold here. So I'm like, la 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 la.
Yeah,
You're
we
in
honor when we always talk about how we honor when one of us feels the need to talk and the other's like, I got nothing, and then they got something, we got nothing, because it's the rotation of filling in the story.
Yeah.
But anyways, keep going with your promised land walk.
Well, I was curious because then I also I kind of did that pilgrimage, right? I went to, I climbed Mount Sinai, the same trip that I swam in the Red Sea or scuba dived in the Red Sea.
Right.
So I'm curious. And then it was Billy Carson from Forbidden Knowledge talking about that idea of being the water being pulled out and that whole kind of sea being sucked back and the tsunami giving that space.
Can you see the souls being ushered through? When there's like, so I guess what I'm seeing is when the water pulls back and there is all this land, can we watch and see the spirit of the souls or whatever we're looking at move through?
Yeah. Because I mean, if that's the right story, then the human
also-
beings would have passed, but there would have been so many probably attempts before that, maybe to swim or to do whatever that would have been lost in there.
And there's also a clearing that there's a similarity or a mirror or a parallel. No, that's what I'm looking for. The word is a parallel with the Lemurian. I almost want to say trapment. The souls that kind of were stuck in that Lemurian pocket too.
I feel like when we talk about this if I look at my eyes watching Lemuria or what happened in like the Red Sea, I'm watching it from the eyes of the water.
Yeah.
And so I feel like I was in both places.
Yes.
And I think that if I even think about Atlantis and that energy, I'm underneath I'm pulling it down. So I feel like I was part of the wave at Lemuria and the Red Sea stuff with Moses, but the more of a drawing down, pulling down.
The masculine.
Yeah, the energy and Atlantis energy, which is interesting. So I think I was part of the waters there, and I think that what I'm still holding in my system is the stories in all three places that I'm tuning into currently, and I'm really curious about liberating that through joy, perhaps, because water does represent joy, and that's Meredith is really feeling that energy currently. And so this is interesting because I'm like, oh, this is a lot to hold and get it out of me. Is like what I really want to say. And I'm like, ugh. But we're curious right now. And we're curious about different ways to not just like, oh, burn it up, put a fire. You know what I mean? Like,
Dry you out.
draw me
Bring
out.
in the Sahara.
Yeah, bring in the sun or something. And it's not about drawing it out of my body. It's about something else.
Yeah.
That's more
For me, it
uplifting
feels
feeling.
like, weirdly enough, because the tsunami can feel like it's coming to get you or it's coming towards you. But I actually feel like we're in that the cusp of the drawing back that we actually have to create space.
And it's interesting now because all my terror that I've had for tsunamis in this lifetime, I can see now it's not mine. Because I was part of the tsunami and I'm actually okay with it. What I'm noticing, I've been feeling all the terror of these souls inside my system and their fear about being pulled in the water.
So we have to create space to help,
Yeah, them cross through. And I'm going to be a portal to cross that.
perhaps.
It's so interesting because I was like, no.
Don't do that.
It's already, I mean, let it go. It's already inside me.
Yeah, it's not inside you anymore. You're okay.
I still feel it. What are you getting? Why?
It's
Yes, let's hear.
it's like stop doing. Shh.
I know I'm getting really
Stop doing. Shh. No doing. No doing. No doing. And the visual they're giving me is like, think of Moana when like the ocean danced and like you could like opened and parted to show the shell
Yeah.
and the magic. So fall into the softness. There's no doing. There's no fixing. This isn't your responsibility. There are already things in place to allow those souls to go where they're meant to go.
Just tap my fingers and wait.
You're not, yeah. So like lean into that resistance that there's like an ego attachment into this story that you want. It feels really grippy.
What it is, it feels uncomfortable in my body, and I want the feeling to go away.
Right. So you can't force it to go away. That's not the nature of water in this case, right? The opposite, the tsunami is like a forceful one. The opposite is true. So think about the settling out after. There's a lot of anger.
And like the frothiness, I'm like seeing like the how waves hit a shore and it's all frothy and angry sometimes, like that energy. No wonder I hate.
But
like,
you know what?
surfing.
It's like frothing, like yeah, when it hits against something hard.
Okay,
Just
life is being hard right now.
for context. So can you soften?
There's a lot of, and that's water is so emotional. This is a lot of I'm like thousands of emotions in my system that I'm like, ugh.
So don't think it. Just let it feel. Just let it move. Even just think of that. Just ocean breath in and out right now. Like in for two, out
Ocean
for
breath
two.
is like, want me to go real ocean breath?
No. Just do a soft version. Nobody wants to listen to that in a microphone. Talk about fucking PTSD and trauma.
Yeah, okay. Do you want me to really do that?
You can just visualize it energetically. Just moving that. And then I want to be like, hi Dee, remember the magic of the water? Boopity boop boop. Like these little sparkly, like there's so much joy coming through my heart about what the water can do, what it's capable of doing, what it creates, what it holds. Because it holds joy too. It holds.
I just see it like it's still pulled back. It's pulling back for space.
It's interesting because I knew that joy was going to be the thing that really, translates.
Why don't you
this.
like me?
I do, but it's funny because it's like I used to have like, oh, joy's going to help with this, but as soon as I said that, I was like, get it out, burn it up. Like there is such an interesting.
That's why I was like, why don't you like me?
Why don't I like joy? It's not for. There's like an energy now I see that's coming through that I'm like snarling at it.
Yeah, I'm hearing like joy doesn't get shit done.
That's exactly what I want to say, but I didn't want to be rude.
Yeah.
Joy doesn't get shit done.
Yeah, great.
It's just hanging out, just doing nothing.
Yeah, is that true?
No. Yeah.
It's like that transmission,
This-
right? Because
it's like
joy,
this
joy
job
and
is too
grief
big.
are like opposite, right?
Yeah.
So it's like that, literally the dark and the light, and the of like that. So does grief? Get
And Joy's like, watch me get things done.
Yeah, I was like, does grief get stuff done? Also, what's the attachment with getting stuff done? What's the agenda there?
I'm a doer.
Mm.
Right? I don't know. It feels like I've got like that energy of being impatient. Let's get it done and move on. And it's funny because where I want to move on to is a place of just joy and bliss. Like, let's hurry up and get the seriousness stuff done and let's get all this work done so we can go play.
We resist that witch.
And then the
right?
joy's like, I'm right here. And I'm like, but you're not going to get this done. I need to get other things done before I can go meet you.
Yeah.
Oh,
Let me learn about joy by doing the exact opposite.
Yeah.
Somewhat true, but also.
So silly. All right, joy.
I feel like the
I
wave
surrender
pulling
to
back
you.
is actually just like
Revealing.
sit in your own bullshit here, lady.
I'm sitting in my bullshit.
Let's
Yeah.
pull this forward.
Okay, I'm going to just relax into joy.
Yeah, by all means,
In a
do
very-
something.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm going to relax into joy with like, all the resistance in a pouch. It's not dramatic enough for me.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and it's interesting when we look at the parallel of all those people that would be on a beach or would be somewhere close, not suspecting the tsunami. They're just, what are they doing?
Yeah.
Enjoying.
Yeah. And here comes this chaos.
So do you feel like if you're just
I
enjoying,
feel like it hit you out of nowhere.
I feel like
that if you're
joy is so precious. And it's such an aim to always try to get to joy that when you're there, then what if a tsunami just wipes it all away? Like, then it's like, oh no. Like, I'm almost like, it's so painful to have it taken away. And so there's a resistance of
see it
even
coming.
feeling it. Yeah. So like, think exactly that. Like, there's like these innocent people just playing and making sandcastles. And even going back to some of the stories that we heard that happened on the shores of Southeast Asia, like wild stories of just people doing their lifing and their joy and their bliss and their play. And then
Can I offer you something
Mm-hmm.
too? Is like you're just thinking of your gene keys right now and the eye. There's like a story of shame coming out of like, how did I not see it? But like you did see it, but like I didn't see it coming, like that aspect. And so it's like, you know what you're not going to see. And there's like an interesting tie-in to that.
it's like, yeah, what part of them made them go there in the first place at that exact time?
Or like if also like, you know that things are going to come in life and you're like bracing yourself for that.
Oh yeah. Before they even come, so I just avoid it.
Well, not avoiding it, but it's just holding. There's like an interesting, like trying to do and fix and create rather than like allow, which water is like, it's just an allowance. Mm-hmm. You can't really stop water from going anywhere it wants to go, really. Mm-hmm. You can't stop a tsunami.
You can't stop tsunami or emotions. And I'm seeing like an eye in the water now and what it would look like to see things through water. Does that make sense? Like a watery eye? Mm-hmm. And it's not, I'm like, you would think that makes things not like less clear, but I'm seeing like a lot of holograms in the water, and a lot of different stories in the water. And then it's like, I don't really know what the words for this is. 'Cause it's not coming in as straight words, but I'm getting a feeling like water is asking me just to like let go. I'm holding on so tightly to perfection. And so I'm desperately trying to keep perfection. And then it's like, but which is obviously you can't hold perfection in anywhere. That's not a thing. Whatever perfection means. But like, so then I'm almost like, we keep talking about this, you know, us coming into this bliss, like this time of bliss and this new earth joy and everything's going to be perfect. But then like in the truth of it all, like, it's like, I'm holding on so tightly, but in the fear of like, okay, once I get, it's never going to really come. Like, cause how can everything be quote unquote perfect?
Yeah. Also, what does that even mean?
What does that mean?
Right. So you're hanging on to something that doesn't exist with like an expectation of no experience for that
Yeah.
actual reality.
Whereas like
Unless you were like
that
in the
could
oneness.
be the Lemurian tie, like where Lemurian was this perfection and this bliss and like always this, like how we perceive it to be that way, and that it's got to be brought into here and it's going to be this. But when we live in just that place and we can't see the other stuff coming because it still comes.
It's not, everything comes anyways. And then my life's work for Gene Keys is the shadow of judgment into the gift of integrity into the city of perfection, which then perfection there just means it's all perfect right now. Like we're in bliss right now. What are you waiting for?
Yeah.
And then we speak a lot about in the spiritual community about coming into the 5D, coming into bliss, coming to all this stuff. And then we were speaking a little bit about it yesterday and like, oh, when it's going to come, it's going to be this and this. I'm like, but it's already here.
Yeah.
Like all the dimensions are living with us right now all the time, but we're just choosing not to be present. And I'm tuning more into like that energy of the fourth dimension, that presence. And just if you're just here feeling whatever is alive, then you're in such a deep experience of perfection all the time. And I think now I'm starting to understand the perfection of just the moment, but there's still this part of me that's like having to die, that's being rigid
Yeah.
around this whole thing. So I'm okay to let that die. If
Yeah,
you want
I
to go
can
ahead
feel
and swoop that away.
It's draining.
Yeah.
I'm pulling it out as
Yeah,
you're
I start
speaking.
to, and then I'm starting to see that the tsunami's actually just calm down.
Yeah.
It's not actually a tsunami.
Aw. Just gentle lapping water.
It's whatever you want it to be.
Life is that, whatever you want it to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can feel that releasing out.
So perhaps,
Which
like,
is interesting because I got a lot of water retention, so I'm curious about what's going to happen to my
kidneys,
physical body.
so just throwing this as a weird question out there, like when you were sensing all of these souls, do you think these souls, like this is like you realizing this for your own being is a mere representation for all these souls that perhaps died in a tsunami, needing that type of transmutation or lesson? Or what's your guys' thoughts on that?
I don't know. I'm thinking that because if my consciousness was being rigid, then and I'm holding the holographic information of all these souls, but I don't want to let it go. So I'm holding it in prison. So as I let it go, they're liberated. I would imagine that's why I'm seeing it from my own system because I'm holding them. They're not being held here by
Right.
anything but other than me.
Right. Yeah. No, I hear you. What's your thoughts? What's your thoughts, Meredith?
I'm getting two things. Like just when you're saying that, it's like when water forgets, right? So like, can water allow itself to forget? Like not in the sense, and it's just interesting because we're saying like water is a cache, like it holds a memory of everything always, so you can always access that, but you don't have to keep it alive-end,
Yeah.
which we talk about, right? And so when we're hanging on to it, we're not allowing it to flow. And then I'm also talking to, I can feel, stay with me, folks, like the underwater lord, like the underworld a little bit, and people that have passed there spending some time learning some stuff there. There's a whole diversity. It's like just
Hanging
showing
out
me
with Poseidon?
city on city on city on like different things, and it's just like just let it be. Like we don't need to talk to those folks for today's story. Like there's all kinds of things down there, and that's cool for right now, right? And I can feel you getting curious about that, but
Yeah, I'm like, whoa. Another time.
yeah.
Yeah. So now if you were
It's just like I just even like the cool, it's cool, right? Like
Yeah.
there's some that that have released, but more it's like the releasing in you so they can,
And it's not even so that they can release because it's like it's not. They're probably never. They're not stuck here. I'm just holding information. I'm not
No, I
holding
know,
souls,
that's what I'm
which is so
saying, yeah.
interesting because it's like if you think about homeopathics again, it's not like you're holding the whole plant or whatever. You're just holding a frequency information of the essence of
gift
that.
it.
So then I just feel it. It's like almost just it's just frequency in my body that I was holding on to because I was feeling perhaps rigid and or responsible for something that or whatever the story behind that was. Who knows? But I'm happy to let the waters of my body rest and let it go. And that reminds me just of emotions too in our body. Like it's we do that active memory technique in body talk where we help the brain process memories that and from a place in the limbic brain that have when it's emotionally charged, that part of the brain has no idea of time, and it just keeps reliving that memory as if no time has ever passed. Like time doesn't necessarily heal things. It's just the unprocessed is just when the emotion finally processes and it's not attached to that memory anymore, that it can rest into long-term memory and not have a
that's how
place.
trauma works, right?
Yeah.
Trauma is active in the frontal, like it doesn't go until you've moved it.
Until you moved it, so it won't. And then as soon as you move it, then you still have the memory, but there's no emotional
not the
attachment to
charge to
it.
it, yeah.
So it's no longer like controlling your life. It's just a memory that then turns into wisdom versus something that's traumatic. And so I think that's what's feeling. I'm not going to forget, but I'm going to release the charge around it. So now it's transmuting my body as a wise wisdom kind of energy versus like rigid holding on to these active memories I'm not letting
Fear,
die.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now if you were just to think of like Vancouver and perhaps like, just in that reflection of tsunami, because when you were talking about it, you were so charged, how would you reflect on that story now?
Like right now, just so neat how quickly this works.
Yeah.
Because right now, if I think about the oceans around Vancouver, they're sparkly and joyful, and I'm noticing like the orcas and all the the marine life, and I've actually done a lot of scuba diving down there, and I'm just remembering all the joy of that place. And right now, it feels like it's inviting me back in with a lot of like play.
Cool.
And how quickly that happened. That's amazing.
Way to step in there,
Thank
Mare.
you.
Way to
Yeah.
step in D.
What's that?
Way to step in D. Just over here. La 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 la.
Yeah. That's great. No, I like it when you're like, no, that's no.
I'm curious
No.
now about going back to hanging out in Sirius B a little bit more. In my mind,
I could feel that opening up again. I could feel you like putting on, for lack of a better word, like a water coat and like some like water
Being
outfit
curious,
and like being
yeah.
curious about what you like wisdom you have and which knowledge you can bring forward to allow yourself to play a little bit more
So wild.
and be more alive.
Alive.
Or the ability to have more of a relationship with water. You know, or however that comes in.
Maybe you
for
can get that structured water into your house now.
Yeah.
I was
We've
gonna
been
say,
laughing. We've like I don't know what it is, Pam. Some special water filter
An
thing for
dilemma.
your house.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was just like there's this guy's come 4 times and it hasn't been installed. And what the hell? And I'm like, what are you resisting? Just in like regular conversation before. And so I think it's funny that we
probably
have
gonna-
a
it's
whole.
probably
It's
gonna
probably
go
he's
in
going to
this
show
week.
up and have all the parts. It'll be in and you'll like
Yeah.
not even
Ugh.
be an issue.
She'll text us in 2 days. It's done.
Yeah.
My structured water unit is installed after this episode.
Yeah.
Thank you
Yeah.
for highlighting it. It's like, I can't go into the house yet. You haven't fully accepted the joy of water.
Beautiful boundary. Water is like a major boundary, really, isn't it? In all its forms, ice, oceans. It's kind of cool.
It is
for that.
cool. And I do want to honor like the information there. Like it's undying. Like the information is it wild. Like even if you think about, we've got our big quartz crystal sitting in front of us today, but I have a Lemurian quartz crystal. It's the first crystal I ever connected to, talking about Lemuria. But it's that too, because it holds it seeds all the information that was like part of that. And it's being held in the water, in the whales and the mammals there, the dolphins, these places that it gets seeded into. And I just get so curious when I hold things like that. If the information that I'm actually grateful that it doesn't get pulled out. It doesn't get like just, maybe it's neutralized in emotion, but it's still there for us to read. And I'm really grateful for that, because there's so much history in our planet that I want to be able to access.
Yeah, and I'm thinking too about like we're made up of 70% water. So as you were talking, I'm like the stories are within, and when we think about like healing or transmuting or shifting, and when we go to see people, I think it's fairly well known, or hopefully now, that like it's not about that necessarily that person, but they're like holding space for you so that you can discover yourself. And like that water frequency is in us all the time. And I'm picturing, again, in our previous episode we talked about the heart, and how like plasma and blood has got so much water component to it, and it goes and it converses with the heart every single time. Like our body like circulates that, and so it picks up information and throws it out, and that's like the water within our cells, right? And like intercellular as well. Just this, like there's just so much wisdom within, and so it's like go explore within to find these stories in yourself. And just like I'm feeling very much the joy and the curiosity of like, what is this?
Yeah.
Right. And like, how do you begin to explore that for yourself?
Yeah. And highlighting that aspect of even Dr. Emoto's work about your own thought and how we speak to ourselves. What do we message in our own waters, and what frequency of consciousness is being held by the waters of your body?
Yeah.
In the way that your thoughts are literally vibrating through the waters of your body from head to toe.
Yeah.
Creating a certain frequency of then that equals then the state of your physical self and your physiology.
Okay. Can you just stick with me on this? Can I ask you about UTIs?
Yeah.
I have one too.
Let's do it. It's watery.
Yeah. So like, what is it? Can you just tell me about UTIs right now?
I mean, just that it's an infection.
It's
of
infection, but
bacteria.
like more like the consciousness, like what's happening there. Cause I feel like I want to ask you about it right now. So I'm curious to see what comes through.
Yeah, Pam.
Oh, we talked about this before. It was about the consciousness of UTIs came down to relationships. Remember we talked about that?
We did.
We
I don't feel like we did.
We
not
don't
on
talk about it.
maybe not an episode, but I remember looking at it one time for something, a client maybe, but it was all about the waters of relations and your mindset and your consciousness around what would be happening in sexual health relationship.
Oh, it's
Is
like
UTI?
specific sexually?
Is it?
Yeah, sensual and sexual.
Oh.
Interesting.
So not just relationships in general?
It was more about sensuality and sexuality.
Oh, that makes sense.
If you tune in now, is that what's asking? I'm thinking of it in like relation to water, urine being water, right? And then like contaminated or like bacteria ridden water.
Well, then it remind well, sensuality and sexuality is relationship for sure, and partnership, but it's also in like the idea of, again, we talked about mundane house tantra.
Yeah.
In that sense, like how sensual and sexual can you be with water? How can you allow water to be sensual with you?
Or would it just be about, then if it's about relations, like more or less the joy
Yeah, because
in the
water
relations?
is joy.
Right?
Right, but right now I don't think it's really about relationships
Oh.
as like Mary was saying, is like what the relationship with water in itself, but it does tie into sexuality and sensuality. And so, and that is then joy and blissful and activating and empowering and all these different energies. And if you think about then like that state of bliss and activations and partnership, and I'm getting like feelings of like Isis and her Temple of the Nile. And
Yeah, there we go. Go there.
yeah.
That's what I want. That's why I'm asking.
Yeah, and then all the teachings of like sex magic through water, and you go through a whole Nile water river initiation to become fully activated in your chakras and your waters of your body to be a sensual sexual being.
Interesting.
Damn, Isis and Hathor.
Damn, Isis.
But I can feel like moving through my water, and she's on my own body, and then even as the kundalini rises in your body through sensuality and sexuality, through like maybe an orgasm, that is then moving through as that energy rises, it has a frequency for the waters of your system. That's like information from these ancient mystery schools of sex magic.
What's sex, like like when you say ancient schools of sex magic, what do you mean by sex magic?
Like there is ancient old stories of these schools in Egypt where women would learn how to master their systems to activate in like a tantric way. So they become then the activators in sexual practice for the man. So if you read like the Mary Magdalene manuscript or something, that's really in there. So it talks about practices through orgasm, through the feminine body, and how that afterwards you have to then nest with the man, and that actually moves through the auric space, and he gets the codes from the woman's body.
Oh.
But it's very watery.
Is this a book?
Yeah, I have it. No, I don't have it yet, but I've borrowed somebody else's. But yes, it is a book.
Okay.
Mary Magdalene.
wanna read it.
Spicy reading.
I don't want to read it.
My goodness.
Yeah.
My Mary. What have you been up to?
Mary Magdalene.
Niall.
Not a
Mary
little
Magdalene. it's a great
Let's share my
book.
codes.
Yeah, you think what happened between those two is just, it's a wild little story.
Yeah.
But it's very, 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 in like sexual energy, it's all about water.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. And sexual energy being creation energy too, like power. Love that. Very cool. I'm curious why I was like led to
Well, if
turn
you
from that. It's like
even through this, I mean, we're talking about the Red Sea. This is like all Egypt energy. I'm really feeling that Nile energy right now. That region of the world is where Kundalini first landed, supposedly through the reptilians, quote unquote, for our
I
last
just love
episode.
showing up today.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm prone to UTIs.
Yeah.
Same.
FYI.
FYI. So maybe you need to read this book
Yeah.
and tap more into the waters of
And
sexuality.
you know, it's so
in
interesting
the
too,
ancient
because
way.
when I have like a UTI, I'm always like almost like fearful to like be intimate again, like have sex or whatever, because you're like, oh, it's going to happen again, or it's going to reoccur from that or whatever. But it's like this, it takes the joy out of the sex, like, or the intimacy, right? Because you're like, oh, what am I going to have to deal with after that?
Right.
Like, was that one time worth all of this?
So I'm curious because now
So
I can
interesting.
see you in the time. I can see you now in that temple of Isis. So I have a lot of memories of being a student.
Was I with her? Because as we were talking, I was like, me and Dee feel like we're together in this
Maybe.
for some
High
reason.
five,
I
right?
was just like,
But not only just that, but I would say like UTI, I feels like all in that area, like UTI, or even like say perhaps like a BV or like a yeast
Yeah.
infection or something post.
and we were talking about root chakra. Remember, I was like, this keeps coming up, root chakra.
and this is all Kundalini.
All right.
And
So
then-
we've cleared your stuff. So get on to
Get on to,
Dee
come
here.
on to you guys. But it's, and one of the most like intense memories, right? If you talk about a cat,
adjust my butt here. Gotta make some space.
some space. We've got
It's getting hot.
gonna get hotter.
Okay.
It's gonna get hotter. I'm like getting all like.
That's
now
why
it's
she's
just
I
wearing
was
like
like,
the
here we
pink
go.
of the like vulva.
Yeah, that makes
That's
sense.
I'm a big vulva for you today. We churned quick from
Me and Dia.
tsunamis to vulvas. But this is the opposite of, or the.
I mean, it is kind of a tsunami. Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Let me tell you, the tsunami I can create. Okay.
That's good.
I have, through the Akashic energy, I constantly come to a memory that's me in the mystery school along the Nile, and I'm in this like really beautiful stone room. Everything is like carved really beautifully, and I've got this like long braid down my back, and I'm kneeling and I'm like in some sort of ceremonial practice. And I know and I can feel that this is like the Temple of Isis, and we're in a practice of sex magic. And if you read the Mary Magdalene manuscript, you'll see more of those stories. And it's just these girls that are learning from like a young age up until probably 20 by the time they were kind of graduated, like some really interesting mastery. And I'm curious more about that. And when I went to Egypt, unfortunately, we didn't get to go to the Temple of Isis. But I was really upset about that. But when I tuned in, she said, "Oh, it was going to be too quick. You need to come back here again with a group of women and do it right." And now I'm actually seeing. I see Dee quite clearly in that same temple, and I can see Mare in there too, but kind of hiding behind a curtain.
Tracks. Always suspicious.
Yeah, she's like, let me
Always
just.
suspicious.
How do I blend in here?
Just be cool. Be cool. Be cool. Be cool.
And I'm like, there, get over here.
Yeah, I totally felt like that when you're talking. I was just like, I felt like I and Dee were young girls, like,
Yeah, we're like, oh, it's sex magic.
So when
yeah,
and
totally.
and now that I'm looking at you guys in there, I feel like now, but maybe like in the perspective, I'm seeing it as like I'm now standing as like one of the instructors.
Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
we're
I'm
so
like-
mature in there. We're like,
Literally, I feel like you're like tall and thin and like wired. I'm like kind of chunky. I'm like, we have like little boobies and a tiny bit of like pubic hair.
I'm like, do I have to show my vagina?
Bravo.
What am I doing?
Oh my gosh, this is so funny. This is so cute. And you're like, what do you want me to do? I'm like, nothing. Just sit. And I'm like laughing because there's
Do I need a yoni steam?
Where
What
we're
do I
like,
need?
do we want to go down there? Is there stones? What do we do?
Are we just doing like douches? Oh my gosh. And like my perspective of like watching, like as the elder woman kind of watching these two young ones coming into this temple space and like to this new school, and there are like all these expectations, like, what do you want us to do? Like, should we bare ourselves? And I'm like,
incredibly awkward.
and I'm like,
yeah.
put your clothes back on. That's not where we're going today. We're going to start with the basics. Let's just talk about our root chakra today, 101.
Okay, that feels safe.
Yeah.
Okay, that feels safe.
Put your robes back on and sit down and take a little.
Can I pop a nipple out?
I feel like you're like, look, I have nipples here. La, 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 la.
Like, that's not until grade 5. You're still in kindergarten.
What's a body? La, la, la.
What do these do?
When do I get to learn about this? Oh, that's
Okay, actually
hilarious.
teach us now. We're just distracting you. We're just being naughty
We're
students
trying
right now.
to delay
Yeah.
the inevitable.
Well, it's so funny. I'm actually going to be doing a talk on this in a couple weeks,
Oh,
which
fun.
is hilarious.
So me and Dee should be in the front row for that.
Literally, literally, or maybe you're prepping me for this talk. And this is so funny because you tune into like, well, even like sexual relationships with people have in the current climate we have in our world, and how out of touch we are with the essence of the magic that can happen between a solo practice or a practice with a partner. And there's so much hidden mystery here, and we'll go back to like the idea of like, thank God the waters are holding information, because if this got lost, then it's such a, like, that's sad. I don't want to lose this information. That if it got deleted somehow in the world, and the fact that these mystery schools were in Earth time a long time ago, and if that was washed away, but somehow the Nile is keeping it alive. It's holding the information there. It's holding it. And I got to cruise along the Nile for days last year, which was so cool, remembering what ISIS had put in there so people can cruise down the Nile and remember.
You know what's so weird is that the Nile doesn't feel sacred, it feels dirty.
Well, then
Is that why we have UTIs?
Yeah. Fuck.
maybe. Well, if you think about now, if we're talking about right now, if you say that, then do you think sex is dirty?
The clean, like the water doesn't feel clean.
So this is, I guess, then you go into like, so sex magic 101, lesson 1 would be like, okay, what's your beliefs around sex? Are you in a healthy relationship with it? Do you have a healthy consciousness around it? Do you actually think it's dirty? It's only safe with a certain, like, only with your husband or your partner? Or how do you feel about solar practices? Is that dirty? And that's a lot of information there. And I think we can't really step into the next stepping stone of what the potential of sexual relationships, either with self or with other, is, until we can still go, what's my own personal relationship with this? Is the Nile dirty, or is that how I see it, or is it full of potential? So how do you, if you were to tune in right now into your root chakras, how do both you feel about sexuality and sensuality?
I feel super split. Right? There's like the one that's like, yeah, I got this. Like totally like creation, whatever. And then the other one's just like, there's a lot of pain and a lot of like trauma sitting there of being like, yeah, no, it's just like more of like what Dee was like, if I do this, then like that punitive, like shame piece, which is really interesting. And I've like done a lot of work around that, but it still feels very active right now.
But
And
like
you're
half
asking-
of it.
Yeah.
Is it like split like down the middle, or is it kind of just mixed half and half?
Well, right now I'm like, it's all bad. I love drama, but it's not. Like there's the other, like I always feel like there's like a war going on within me of like who I know I can be or who I actually am, like, which is like super creative and super empowered in like that sexual energy and like curious and wanting. And then there's like this human reality, which feels like it's been polar opposite to that, where it's been just like hurt and pain and like shame and guilt and like, yeah, like physical ailment. So it feels like a very much like a
Right.
like a fracturing of
I
what
identify
in my
with that
heart
too.
to you feel that too of know to be true, and yet this lived reality in this human life.
And so again, root chakra, this is where the Kundalini resides and lives and kind of nests itself. And that's also where sexual energy and the waters of sex are held in the root. But of course, the root is still all about our physical safety and about the material world and the relationships that we have in the 3D realm. And so when we're like, okay, they both live in the same place. Like they like the nitty gritty of life lives in the same place as the magic of sexuality and life force energy of the Kundalini. Right. And that's just a curious place. Like I always want to like imagine the Kundalini starts in the second chakra, but it doesn't.
Right.
It starts in the root. You think sensuality, sexuality starts in the second chakra, but it doesn't. It starts in the first chakra. It starts at that base energy, and that is one of the most sexual chakras, not the second. It doesn't start there. That one will build it and amplify it and create a fire there, but it doesn't. That's not the initiator. And so then when we think about how much trauma there has been to the physical body and in that place of insanity when it comes to sexuality and sensuality, of course there's a fracturing energy here.
Yeah.
And that we can feel that. I can feel that for myself, and you two can, and I'm sure a lot of people that listening can feel that energy.
Yeah.
And so this is the first, place, which is probably one of the hardest places to leap into for the next thing is how do we bring some resolve into that place where it was so damaging.
Yeah. Even just like the fear, like bring it back to like the UTI or like BV or like some of these things is like this lack of trust, right? With like something's not going to happen, right? Or all of a sudden like your vagina is not going to explode or something like whatever. And so it's like, how do you feel safe when you are carrying that frequency of that fear, right?
And I find when I get a UTI, I'm like, I go into a fear response of like, I have to get medication. I have to deal like I'm almost so scared that it's going to escalate into, because I find I've had UTIs where they've gone like into like fever,
Right.
pretty bad. And so it's like this fear of like, instead of just trying to like sit and flush it out, like in consciousness, I'm like, no, it's like, it's a weekend. The doctor isn't open. I got to go and get a prescription this way, or got to go to urgent care. Now I need to go on antibiotics. And it's like this whole like thing. And it goes straight into like the fear.
Interesting.
Yeah. And it's like, makes sense of it being in that part of the body. It's like this, like, oh, I have to deal with it right away. Otherwise it's just going to get worse.
Which is so interesting because it's like, then there's a panic and a terror that's happening there versus being like grounded with it, obviously, because you're having like that kind of reaction. And then you think about like going into prescriptions, and there's like some proven in Chinese medicine, some proven showing that's antibiotics is a cold. It's like a dampening, it really brings a lot of coldness to your body.
Yeah.
And then you take it to help, but then you have to then rebuild all the warmth in your body again. Like it's really, it completely destructures like that system and makes everything really, really cold.
Makes sense.
And then you have to rebuild all of that. And what you need for sexual health is heat. And but then you're running to a thing that completely makes you cold.
Yeah. To kind of like wipe it out more.
And then you're having to come out from a bigger hole because now you have to create that heat again and then start again. Okay, why am I afraid of this?
Interesting.
I'm feeling like an invitation to come back to the trust of what we actually know, like stepping into more of like those giggling little girls also grew into women.
Yeah.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? That knew
masters
some
in that
stuff. Like,
temple.
yeah, we graduated
You
for
did.
sure.
We know it.
We didn't drop out. I came from behind the curtain.
With I can see all the symbols and codes of all the things that you both had learned in that lifetime of being a part of that education, and it's all waiting for you to. It's also like, can I trust letting this in now? It's all kind of sitting on your Wei Qi.
It's so funny because I can feel like it's the same kind of like frequency that you were just holding with a tsunami, right? But like a different,
Yeah.
But it's the same like of the letting go to
letting
trust,
go. Yeah.
right? The letting go to allow that like holding to like to go.
And what's interesting in that school, you would have also learned, like if you think about the intensity of orgasm, it can get really, really intense to the point if you get full body orgasms, you literally feel like you can explode.
Yeah.
Like literally, if this gets any more intense, I'm actually going to explode. And can be terrifying to the safety. I'm like,
no, the orgasm. I'm just like, bring it.
Oh, so I'm like, I literally will be particles.
You want it to be particles. You
I know, but
told
then-
yourself so many times.
I
I
know.
know.
So good to like. It feels good to not have your brain have to hold anything.
Yeah,
you're in a
but then there's
particle.
that fear of like the like to a certain yes, and so a certain degree there's like a whoa.
Yeah,
if I go
that's
past this point now, it's like this is great, and I'm totally, like letting all particle form happen. There's a certain degree where there's an edge, and then at that edge you're like, I might not come back from this. Like there's something even like a deeper sense
Birth
of
is like,
losing.
I got it.
A deeper sense of
Just,
losing
like,
control.
Birth me into that.
Oh, well, no, I've never had it. Like I've never had it where I've had fear associated with an orgasm
Yeah.
ever.
And it was more like, okay, I got to rein it back.
Yeah.
I'm kind of like, no, I'm just like, just fragment it out. Let's just do it. I feel so good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she feels so calm in that.
I'm like, ugh. And I'm like, I like going in no man's land for 5 minutes. It's good. I'll come back. I know I come back. It's all good.
She just like birth.
No fear. No fear in that part. No.
I feel like this is an episode that we can
Yeah,
continue
we
in the
have to
future.
continue.
But yeah, so much gratitude to water. And I
Yeah.
feel like a lot of joy for
Yeah,
showing up.
as we wrap
It's
up.
an entirely different frequency than what we started. So
Which is great.
I
Because that's
love
what water
that.
is. It holds everything.
yeah, so
Oh,
good.
Gosh. I love you
So,
girls.
I love you
Thanks
too.
for holding safe
Fun.
space
Thanks,
today. Don't forget to trust yourself.
And be yourself fully.
And love yourself.
Until next time. Bye, guys.